Ever get that feeling like people expect you to be perfect?
Yeah.
Especially with your beliefs. Like you have to have it all figured out, never mess up, always on brand, you know?
Oh, totally.
Well, that's what we're diving into today with two of history's most famous Stoics, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca.
Big names.
For sure. And they lived by these Stoic principles, but in totally different ways, like completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
And isn't that what we're still trying to figure out today, really? Like how to actually live by your ideals when the world's kind of a mess.
You hit the nail on the head. So we've got historian Lucius Priscus. He gives this really unique perspective on Aurelius and Seneca. And what's cool is he doesn't try to make them seem perfect, you know?
Yeah.
They're real people in his writing.
Makes them more interesting, I think.
Totally. So before we get into how they're different, let's set the scene. 2nd century AD, Roman Empire's at its peak, powerful but chaotic. And Aurelius is emperor.
Talk about pressure.
No kidding. Leading armies, dealing with rebellions. And in the middle of all that, he writes Meditations, this super insightful reflection on Stoicism.
Which is interesting on its own, right? He wasn't writing it for other people.
Yeah.
Like it was almost a journal, just for him.
To keep himself grounded, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Then you've got Seneca, advisor to Emperor Nero.
And Nero was, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly known for being calm,
That's an understatement. Must have made Seneca's job interesting.
to say the least. So while Aurelius is reflecting inward, Seneca's writing letters and essays for everyone, trying to make Stoicism, like, practical.
Right, for everyday life.
And you can see how their lifestyles influence their Stoicism. Aurelius, dealing with all that external pressure, he emphasizes self-control, detachment from the world. Like he's saying, the only thing you can really control is your own mind.
Makes sense when you're literally running an empire. No room for a bad day when you're Marcus Aurelius.
Exactly. And that's what's great about Priscus. He reminds us that context is everything.
Yep.
Especially with philosophy.
And that's what makes Seneca so interesting, right?
Yeah.
He's in the same crazy world, but he's got to be involved. He's an advisor.
Well, yeah, playing the game.
And it's a high-stakes game with someone like Nero calling the shots. Seneca couldn't exactly afford to be detached. He had to deal with power, wealth, all of it.
And that gets to this really juicy question that Priscus brings up. Is Stoicism allowed to be flexible? Like, can you have wealth and influence and still be a good Stoic?
Right, because it seems kind of contradictory.
Well, that's the million sisters question.
Yeah.
And Seneca definitely seemed to think it was possible. He even wrote, "Wealth is the slave of the wise man and the master of the fool." So for him, it wasn't about, like, rejecting those things completely. It was more about not letting them control you.
So it's fine to have nice things as long as you don't let them define you.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, let's be real, it's something we all deal with.
Totally. And I think that's what makes Seneca so relatable. He isn't this untouchable sage. You know, he's human, he struggled, he made mistakes. Dealing with the same tension we all feel between what we believe and how the world actually works.
Okay, but let's talk about those struggles, because it's easy to look at Seneca, this wealthy guy preaching simplicity, and be like, come on, is this guy for real? Like, that's a major criticism of him.
Yeah, and Priscus doesn't shy away from it, but he also gives us a different way of looking at it. Imagine being Seneca for a second. You're surrounded by luxury, giving advice to an emperor, and trying to live by these principles of moderation.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Right. Talk about walking a tightrope. And that's what I think makes him so interesting. He's not pretending to have it all figured out. He's showing us that it's okay to mess up, to compromise. The important thing is to keep trying, keep coming back to those core values, even when you stumble.
So where does Aurelius fit into this whole thing? Because he seems to have this insane level of self-control. Was he just above it all?
Well, remember, Aurelius was writing to himself, not for an audience. It was like he was holding himself accountable. Even so, you see these hints of doubt and meditations, frustrations, the effort it took to stay disciplined. It's there.
So it's not that Aurelius didn't struggle. It's just that his struggles looked different.
Exactly. And that's why Priscus is so good. He helps us see that both Aurelius and Seneca, they were dealing with the same basic human questions. Like, how do we live a good life? How do we deal with pain? How do we find peace when everything's chaotic? They just came up with different answers, or at least different ways of finding those answers.
It's like they're playing the same game, but on different settings, you know?
Yeah.
Aurelius is on, like, legendary difficulty, and Seneca's maybe more, like, expert level.
And who's to say which one is right? You know, it's about finding what works for you in your own life with all the stuff you deal with.
Right, because it's not like we're Roman emperors or anything. We don't
Oh,
have armies to lead or barbarians to fight.
true. But maybe we do in a way.
What do you mean?
Think about it. We're bombarded with information constantly. Social media, news, everyone wanting something from us. It's like its own kind of pressure.
Yeah, it's like our own version of the Roman Forum is like our phone screen.
Exactly. And in a way, that makes these guys, Aurelius and Seneca, even more relevant. Aurelius reminds us we can always choose how to react.
Stay calm, even when everything's going crazy.
Right. Cultivate that inner peace. And Seneca, he reminds us it's okay to be human. We're going to mess up sometimes.
Compromise is part of it.
Exactly. But you got to keep trying. Keep coming back to those values that are important to you.
So if they were here right now giving us advice, what do you think they'd say?
Oh, man. Aurelius would probably be all about putting down the phone, going for a walk.
Getting back to nature.
Yeah, rediscovering that inner quiet.
Yeah.
He'd probably have a whole routine figured out. Mindfulness, meditation, the works.
And Seneca.
Seneca would probably be a little more understanding of all the distractions. He might say something like, look, it's a crazy world. It's going to pull you in a million directions. Just try to focus on what really matters to you.
Yeah.
Your values.
So it's like choose your own adventure stoicism. You can go full Aurelius, super disciplined, or you can be more like Seneca, the practical stoic.
And hey, maybe the real wisdom is somewhere in the middle, finding that balance.
That's what I'm taking away from all this. Aurelius and Seneca, such different lives, but Stoicism really resonated with them. And they remind us we can all find that strength, that resilience to deal with whatever life throws at us. It's about finding a life of purpose.
Well said.
So next time things get overwhelming, think of these guys, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, two very different approaches, but united by this timeless philosophy. And hey, you might find some other wisdom rubbing off on you too. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.